Hello, I would like to welcome all of you here to our Elite platform and also our lesson today. So I think everyone is comfortable and fine at home, wherever you are. I believe this lesson is going to be very important to you, and you're most welcome to be part of it. Names, I am called Kisembo Jackson, and I'm going to be taking you through geography of Senior 2 on our subtopic of forestry. So you're most welcome, feel at home, let us share, feel free to send your questions and we share as we have our lesson. You're most welcome. Forestry is our topic that we're going to be focusing on today. But before we look at the forestry part, we must have the clear preview of what we have been looking at, and that was vegetation of Africa, natural vegetation of Africa, and that is where our major subtopic comes from. Previously, or before we broke off, we were looking at natural vegetation, and we described the various vegetation zones in Africa, where we agreed that Africa has got a variety of vegetation zones ranging from equatorial, savanna, semi-arid, and also Mediterranean, to name but a few. So that gives us a clear image for us to understand fully the subtopic of forestry in Africa. So let us straight away go to our subtopic of forestry in Africa. By definition, we like to define forestry. How do we define forestry? We're saying forestry is the science of planting, maintaining, and harvesting tree species, mainly for commercial purposes. So in Africa, many people and many countries are involved in the activities of forestry, which is the planting, maintaining of tree species for commercial purposes. But when we look at Africa, Africa has got a variety of vegetation zones like we explained. And these vegetation zones, we say they range from the tropic of hardwood, the artificial, which we normally describe as softwood, and they comprise, for example, species like pine and eucalyptus. In Africa, many countries are covered by forests, where we find ourselves finding a lot of geographical data that refers to this topic of ours. And these countries, for example, we see that Gabon, Swaziland, DR Congo, Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, and mention but a few. So these are countries that we find a very large area where forests have covered most of time. So we're saying forest exploitation in Africa is mainly by the use of both traditional and traditional methods, which we can look at, for example, like the use of axes, pangas, and saws, which are described as modern methods. These methods have been taken on by different groups of people, especially the traditional methods have been taken on by the families and societies that live within these forest zones and want to carry on an economic activity, and therefore they apply the traditional methods to exploit the forestry activities and resources. Then the modern methods, these are mainly applied by the commercial companies that do what? That do invest a lot in forestry and also are improving the sector as an economic activity. So we are going to focus on our case study in Africa, and that is going to be Gabon. We have many countries that have forests or that are covered by forests, but today our focus is going to be Gabon. When we look at Gabon by location, we are saying it is one of the countries in Africa that highly depend on forests, like as we're going to see in the statistics. Now, when we look at Gabon in terms of location, it is located in sub-Saharan Africa, that is along the West African coast on the African continent. But this country, as we see, it is covered by forests over 268 kilometers, and this area is under the coverage of forest, which is an approximate of 21 million hectares and 400 tree species. So this is a diverse of vegetation, and therefore this accounts for a lot. Now when we look at Gabon, commercial exploitation of forests has a long history, beginning as early as 1892, and this went all the way up to 1968 as a major economic activity on which these people in this country were depending on. But this was mainly done by major commercial companies like we talked about. For example, we have the company Equatorial de Gabon. This is a French-based company that has highly invested in the forestry industry in Gabon. Then we also have Gabon Industry. Then we also have the SHR, the Interwood, and the Basso industries. These are all countries that have heavily invested in the exploitation of forestry activities in Gabon for commercial purposes. Now, when we look at Gabon as a country, it has also put in a lot of effort to ensure that this economic activity is highly improved, and therefore they have embarked on the aspect of reserves, protection, ensuring that these forests have been used for sustainable purposes. Therefore, exploitation of these forests include the major species. These are highly commercially demanded species on the world market. For example, like Ume, Ozigo, and Azome, mahogany, etc. These are highly demanded tree species that account for about 85% of the company production and the family production for the entire forestry activity in Gabon. So production of the 15% that goes to the family production, and then the other one is by the commercial companies. Forests, or the forestry industry in Gabon, is run by a national organization, which would say it was stated by the government to make sure that it oversees the activities of afforestation, maintenance, and sustainability, which we call Société Nationale du Bois Gabon. Like we said, Gabon was colonized. If you look at some little bit of history, it was colonized by the French. That's why you see that most of these are French-based companies. Therefore, they are highly invested. And we're saying this was established by the Act of Government in 1976 to do what? To make sure that all activities of forestry are regulated. And the government of Gabon owns about 51% of the forest in Gabon, and then 49% is for the foreign companies. So that is the scope of coverage. So as part of our discovery, we need to understand, we're talking about Gabon. Maybe some of us do not know how Gabon looks like, but here we have our sketch map of Gabon. So when we look at the sketch map, because we are going to meet a question that is going to ask us, for example, to draw a sketch map of Gabon. So geographically, when we are drawing sketches, there are key things that we are supposed to look out. One, make sure that you have a title which must be, which should be bold, clear enough for anyone to see. So like we can see, and we say these are sketches. There should be the aspect of relative location. What is relative location? For any sketch map, we must be in position to understand what sits in the west of the country, what sits in the eastern part of the country, southern part, north, and what have you. So when we look at Gabon, to the extreme north is bordered by the country of Cameroon. To the northwest, we have Equatorial Guinea. To the western part is covered by the Atlantic Ocean, and the east and parts of the south is the country of Congo. So that is our location. And as we also look at a sketch map, there are key things that we must look out. When we have a sketch map, what we expect a student to put focus on as areas of focus. For example, a sketch map must have geographical features. In terms of what? For example, drainage features in terms of rivers. As we see, Gabon has got a chain, a network of rivers that run through, namely Ogooué and Ngoni, which do drain the country in various parts, right away from the center up to the west. And these rivers pour their water into the Atlantic Ocean. Then the other geographical aspect that we expect you always to produce on a map are key human features. For example, towns, ports, railway lines or transport and communication channels. For example, the capital of Libreville, as we can see, and then also Port Gentil, which we believe was highly developed as a result of major economic activities carried out along the way. Now, our major topic being forestry, it is very important that on our sketch map, we show the extent of forest cover in Gabon. Now, if you look very clearly on our work that we have, I believe some of us already have that, then you see that this map, we have demarcations that we have shown in the color of green. So these are areas that have been highly demarcated as zones of forest. For example, we have the Parade National of Wonga Wangu, which is one of the largest reserves located along the western part. Then we have the Lango, which is in the south. Then we also have the Nyanga, which is also in the south. Then in the central part, we have the Okanda, which is the largest reserve within the central. So these are the forest zones that, as we talk about Gabon, that you should be in position to know and understand. So having looked at that, now we want to go to what are the factors that have enabled the growth and development of forests in Gabon. We've looked at Gabon and we see that a very large area of Gabon is covered by forests. Therefore, we want to find out what are these reasons that have enabled the development of forests. We've talked about that the economy of Gabon depends on forestry or accounts for about 85% of the economy in Gabon. Therefore, we must look at these reasons that have enabled the establishment and development of forests in Gabon. So, we look at our first point, which is climate, and we are saying the climate which is mainly equatorial and conducive. This climate has or ranges from has temperatures that range from 22 to 27 degrees centigrade and rainfall which is about 1,500 to 2,400 millimeters. This is per hour, and this kind of climatic condition favors the growth of forests, mainly the species of mahogany and ebony. Then the other factor is the presence of fertile soils that support the growth of tropical forests. As we know that Gabon is located on a relatively low altitude, this accounts for the high fertility soil in the area which have supported the growth and maturity of forests. And then also the other point is the presence of commercial tree species like okume, ebony and mahogany, which have been highly demanded on the world market for their products, and therefore that is also another good factor. Then the well-laid drainage with rivers and other water resources like the ocean. We looked at, when we were looking at the sketch map of Gabon, we saw that Gabon has a network of rivers. These rivers supply water to a variety of landscape. And then we're saying these rivers, not only enough, they are also navigable. That means they allow activities of forestry to take place besides providing water for the growth of trees, but also these rivers aid activities of forestry. For example, like transportation of logs from areas of exploitation to areas of processing. The other point is the large sums of capital provided mainly by the foreign companies. We talked about the foreign companies that mainly have their sources from the USA, Japan, Indonesia, and France. These companies injected a lot of capital in form of machinery, in form of other requirements for the exploitation of forests. Therefore, that is also another point that we should note. Then the other aspect is also large number of foreign companies we talked about that exploit forests, for example, like the CED and the TG. For example, the Gabon industry, which have heavily invested. These industries, what do they do? They are involved in, for example, exploitation activities such as tree felling, processing of the tree species into finished products which are highly demanded, establishment and development of infrastructures which are used by the forest activities. The other point is a presence of cheap labor, which is provided by the population of Gabon, and this cheap labor carries out a variety of activities. For example, tree felling, cutting into logs, transportation, and also preservation as major activities of forestry. The other point is efficient transport and communication network that we talked about. For example, Gabon has got a variety of transport and communication channels that range from railway lines, roads, and also air transport, which enables transportation of these activities or these products of forestry from one place to another, especially from the production and exploitation areas to market centers where they are needed. On our sketch map, we saw, for example, Point Jetty, which is located at the extreme of the country or along the coast. That's where most of these forest products are exported. So they are transported from the interior of the country to these zones where they are shipped to European countries for their market. The other point is supportive government policy that has enhanced sustainable use of forest and conservation. Yes, we must say that the government of Gabon has played a key role. How? We say that the economy of Gabon depends on this economic activity for about 85%. Therefore, it has got all reasons for supporting the forestry activity. Therefore, they have enacted laws that ensure a sustainable use of forests. And then finally, on the factors that have enabled is the presence of a large market provided by both the local people and the foreign companies, especially from Europe and the Western world. Now, products from the forest industry are highly demanded all over the world, which I even want to believe. Even you yourself, you who is seated there, probably even the furniture you're using is a product of forest from Gabon. So therefore, we should say that we are part of this point. So this is a very important point because anyone who is involved in production, you aim at selling your product to people. So if you have market, therefore, this will enable you to develop your activities and therefore this will enable production. Now, at the end of this, I want us to have a question that should guide us. So as we've looked through the aspect of forestry, we've seen that Gabon is a very rich country in terms of forestry. So I want us to focus on this question as we go back. I want us to answer a question that probably will be said to you. And this question would be like, what are the factors that have enabled the growth and development of forestry in Gabon? So I've shared some factors here, and I believe that you can also go and read and research and find some more. Please feel free to share with us. I'd like to thank you for being part of this lesson, and I wish you all the best.